Welcome to the podcast, Speaking to Influence, Communication Secrets of the C-Suite. I'm Dr. Laura Sokola, your host, founder of Vocal Impact Productions and author of Speaking to Influence, Mastering Your Leadership Voice. My guest today is Dina Pokedoff. She is the Senior Vice President of Communications for North America at Kuehne and Nagel, one of the world's leading logistics companies with nearly 80,000 employees in over 100 countries. She started at the company last October to establish the entire strategic communications function, a first in the Kuehne and Nagel North American history. So she's responsible for establishing, driving, and executing the regional communications strategy. Dina's been recognized for her lifelong career in corporate communications with several industry accolades, such as the Reagan's PR Daily Top Women in Communications and PR News Top Women in PR. Amazing. Dina, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Now, before we get into all the down and dirty business communications kind of stuff, what's your fun fact?
My fun fact is that I'm a triathlete.
Wow.
And I started triathloning when I was just shy of 50 years old. So I've been doing it for a couple of years now, and I'm making some really great headway.
That's amazing. So I want to make sure everybody heard that correctly. You started doing triathlons when you were about 50, not 15, 50.
50.
Wow. I mean, at any age, whether we're 15, 33, 53, 183, it doesn't matter. Wow. Impressive. So how many have you done?
Thank you. So I've done 2 Olympic length and I've done about 4 sprint length. So I have an aspiration to do a half Ironman. We'll see if it happens this year. It takes so much time and dedication. It's like a second sometimes. So I'm not sure if the half Ironman is going to happen in 2023. But it is on my, wouldn't that be such a challenge to try?
I'm really glad you said, wouldn't that be such a challenge, as opposed to, wouldn't that be fun? Because then I'd worry.
Well, triathloning is fun in some ways. It's hard.
I would have guessed the second half. I think that, running 10Ks is kind of my max nowadays. And the idea of an Ironman, okay, I'm impressed. Not to mess with you. And let's get to the more work-related stuff. That's awesome. So, okay, we know that you have tenacity, if nothing else. So let's see where this goes in the conversation today. Tell us a little bit about Kuehne and Nagel and your role. What's your 30-second elevator pitch?
So the 30-second elevator pitch for Kuehne and Nagel. So we're one of probably the biggest companies you might not have ever heard of. If you're in the logistics space, you've heard of us, but otherwise you might not have. But the simple version is that we are an integrated logistics partner. We are headquartered in Switzerland, and we bring people and the things that they need closer together. So we're number 1 in air and sea. We also do road and what is called contract logistics or distribution warehouses. And we've been in business since 1890.
Wow.
So it's about 80, as you said earlier, about 80,000 employees, about 400,000 customers. It's a pretty big company and a pretty big deal. So I'm pretty excited to be part of it.
I would take out the pretty. That is amazing. And I would be quite excited to be part of something like that. That's incredible. Right. With all of it, what is your favorite part of your job and why?
Well, as you said in my introduction, I'm really lucky to be a first for Kuehne and Nagel in North America. Actually, communications for Kuehne and Nagel globally is relatively new as a function. But for North America, it's brand new. And although they've been doing communications, there's not been a function or a strategic kind of element to it. So my favorite part of my job is that I get to build something from the ground up.
Wow.
And really make a difference, right?
I would imagine that's it's one thing to build a communications department for a company of 100, but for 100,000, it's a little bit different. So that's a really big hill to climb, I would think.
It is. Well, I'm lucky that my purview is specifically North America.
Oh, is that all? Just the North American continent?
Just the North American continent.
Much
comparatively.
Easier.
So it's the US, it's Canada, it's Mexico. And of course, it has its own set of complications, but, a global scope would be even more complicated. And I'm lucky to work in as part of a global communications network and team who is tackling it across the globe. But I don't mean to downplay it. North America's got its own complications. It's a heavily matrixed organization, and it's not a straightforward place to figure out how to communicate to the right people. So it's somewhere around 13 to 15,000 employees just in North America. So it's not nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And so the communications role, this is both internal and external communications. Is that correct? So
That's
it's
right.
13,000 employees. Oh yeah, and everybody else.
Exactly. And all the other, kind of key stakeholders, that you can imagine, communities and the media
Clients.
to reach those communities. And so, all the usual kind of ways to reach the external stakeholders. Obviously, prospective employees is part of that, customers, partners. So really, it's about how we tell our story, both inside the company and outside the company.
I'm curious, what would you say has been, because you're relatively new in the
Yes, to Kuehne
to
the role,
right, not to communications in general, but
not to the business.
No,
Been doing this quite a while now.
But this is the first time that you've been the person to establish the function for the company, be it a national/continental branch or otherwise. With doing all of that, what is one of the big issues of the day that you do have to communicate to various stakeholder groups? You've mentioned a whole bunch. Pick a few of them, and where do you need to be able to translate that messaging differently for those different groups?
Sure. So one of the hot topics, I think that many organizations are facing, and that, that I have faced in my career as well, and is the topic of DEI. And, this is a topic that, for me personally, I'm really quite passionate about, because DEI to me is about, really looking at diversity as a competitive advantage for an organization, and whether it's about, ethnic diversity, racial diversity, gender diversity. To me, it goes beyond that, and it can also be about diversity of perspectives, diversity of thought, diversity from where people come from, diversity of perspective overall. Because if everyone is coming at a problem all from the same perspective, you're not really going to get a chance to be creative in solving that problem. So organizations that really can do this well can really innovate and be really forward thinking. And it can be a huge competitive advantage for an organization. So the topic of DEI is one that for Kuehne is we're early in our journey. And it was something that I, as I was interviewing, I was asking about and trying to understand. And as I mentioned before, I have a soft spot for this topic. It's something I'm personally passionate about. And so, the organization is still in what I will say, like the forming their strategic thinking on this topic phase. They're really trying to put some thought to this. It's part of the company strategy for our environmental social governance kind of pillar of our strategy, and really thinking this through in terms of the social component of it, especially. So,
So if I understand this correctly, where a lot of organizations and a lot of guests have referenced things with regard to DE&I initiatives, especially if they're leaders in human resources, CHRs, that kind of thing. But you're telling me that this is actually something where Kuehne is just starting to have these discussions, and it's so where some organizations are a little further along, you're really trying to explain the importance of having DEI initiatives in the first place, and then getting that movement off the ground.
That's exactly right, Laura. Sorry if I wasn't being clear.
No, I just want to make sure I'm reinforcing that, because in case somebody was like, okay, so wait, is it? No, because that's a really big place to be, to spearhead entire initiatives like that. So are there groups that are a little harder to get through to, or what's a step that you're taking to how are you reaching different groups with regard to either the why or the what or the how? How do you address the different groups?
Sure. So let me just add to it that the organization is in development of this. So one thing that I think is really important as a communications person, I found a place where I could step in and help support as the company is developing its strategy, right? And so what I did was I advocated for where I have ownership and can take leadership. And so I made the case to our executive team, to our CEO, to the head of HR, that let's take a baby step, right? Like, and this is something that I can take on and I can influence. And that is to have an editorial calendar of topics that we will cover, and we will do so in several ways. We'll advocate to have messaging from the executive team. We will have content on our, as I mentioned before, like our little mini Facebook group for North America. That's My KN, it's called. And we will begin to tell the story as a very beginning step. And the stories that we will tell is simply to identify, okay, so for example, it's MLK Day, or it's Women's History Month, or it's Black History Month. And what we will do is look to tell stories of Kuehne people that are in this space and to get their perspectives and to just begin to profile people, to share what, for example, for Women's History Month, we have a Women in Leadership employee resource group. It's our one employee resource group within the organization at this point. As I said, we're really early in our journey, but at least we're lucky to have a group of women who've stepped up and have created this employee resource group and are really passionate about it. So there was a lot of activities that were going on. I was lucky to be invited to speak on a panel. So the way that we're tackling it is from, at least from a communications perspective, is to begin bringing it to the front, to have it be a topic, to have it be something that we focus on. And it is not, the end all to be all of our communication strategy. Right. It is the beginning. It is a baby step. And somebody might hear me and say, oh gosh, you're creating an editorial calendar, like whoop-de-doo, but it is truly just in an area where I can take leadership, I'm grabbing it and I'm doing it.
And I think that's important. I'm really glad that you mentioned that. So let me reiterate it for anybody else out there that because remember, Dina's in communications, not HR. So it's not the policy of the company. It's not whatever else that you're creating going, hey, we've got a little Heroes and Holidays calendar and check, DEI, done. But it's about where, and I think this is such a valuable lesson for everybody out there to say, okay, in my space, whether I'm in engineering, whether I'm in communications, whether I'm in DEI, whether I'm in finance, ask yourself, what can you do in your role to support these kinds of initiatives? And how do people need to hear it from you? And how do people in your space need to hear it versus some other space? And I think it's great to begin and say, let's make it a topic of conversation. And that's what the communications department is supposed to do. So I think that's a great creative way to really add to and to launch these kinds of programs. So am I understanding that correctly?
To get people, that's exactly right, Lauren. And to get people to start to, oh, hey, this is going on, like just general awareness. And, I think that, we are, as I said, that we're a global company. Mm-hmm. And so the leader, even if we look at the makeup of our teams here in North America, a lot of people aren't from America.
Yeah.
Right. As I said, my role is North America writ large, but as we both know, a lot of the DE&I kind of the thrust of it really where a lot of it is happening is in the US, yes. Right? And so when you have people who are from all over the globe, they might be looking at the American team and being like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean by DE&I? Right? Like, what does that mean? And so I truly think that it's critical. And what I really try to do is look at this from a place of grace and empathy. Like, not everybody's coming at it from the same filter. As we talked about, having diverse perspectives is critical. Yes. And it's respecting that not everybody's going to understand the what's been going on here in the US and why we're even doing or thinking about it like this.
Yes. And that is also something I think that's easy to get frustrated with, feeling especially for people who are in organizations where these topics are such standard or commonplace topics, regardless of to what degree it's effectively implemented, received, et cetera, right, is a whole other question. But to the extent that there are lots of places around the world where this is not a topic at all, and to arrive here and feel like, what is this all about? It's just the awareness.
Or if it is a topic, they're more talking about, gender diversity. Mm-hmm. Right. They're not looking at it from the kind of the wealth of different kind of diverse perspectives that I was, saying earlier. So, right. And, look, I know that the organization will get there. I'm confident that, sure, the company has stated this is what they want to do. We will get this. This will be something that will be more in the forefront in the organization over time. But, as I said, I walked in the door 6 months ago. I looked around. I was like, this is something I can grab onto and really help drive right away
Yeah,
and
I
make an
love
impact
that
right away.
I love that it was one of the first things that jumped out as like, this is something I can own, that I can really make a difference on. And that's got to be inspiring to know that there's such opportunity there that to make a difference.
It, I also think it speaks to the culture of Kuehne that even if it's not, as you said, I don't own it. I'm not in HR. It doesn't always live in HR. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but doesn't seem to be owned by anyone right now. Right. So, I show interest, I show initiative, and I'm going to do something that's in my space that I can make an impact on.
Yes. And to your point, also kudos to Kuehne and Nagel for realizing if you've come and said, hey, I see this major opportunity here to catch up on certain things and to start leading in a new direction. And they said, sure, go for it.
Right.
As opposed to, oh, that's different. We need to discuss this a little bit more. They said yes. And that's really great because every journey begins with a single step, right? And you took that step for them.
Exactly. And with them, because, yes, they still had to come along and, and align on it. And, I think that, without someone saying, hey, here are the ones I think we should at least start with, right? And then get alignment on that. Otherwise, I think people would continue to swirl and wonder, oh, are we allowed to talk about this? And are we not allowed to talk about this? Is this like, well, if we do this, what about that? And, are we going to be like saying something by not saying something? Are we going to say something by saying something? People get themselves all tangled up on both sides. Because as you and I both know, sometimes not saying something speaks even more volumes than saying something.
Yes.
Right? The absence of the content or the absence of a voice on something actually says something more, and it may not be the intention. So it was clearly not the intention here. So I was like, all right, let's chip away at this from the beginning.
Yes, that's such an important point, that the absence of the discussion speaks more than the discussion itself. And so it's great to redirect that. And kudos to you for taking that challenge and taking the risk, again, being new in the space and new in whatever else, to kind of challenge the status quo in a way. Can be, some leaders could have taken that as being very face threatening, so to speak, and that yours was very receptive to it. So kudos to everyone there. And I think that's a great segue to our opportunity to levy a challenge to the rest of the listeners. So for our 24-hour listener influence challenge, here's an opportunity, Dina, I invite you to speak directly to the audience and to challenge them to take one step that they can complete within 24 hours to have more influence. How would you like to challenge our listeners today?
All right, listeners, here's your challenge. So, you never know where life is going to throw, what kind of challenges life is going to throw at you overall. And so I challenge you to go through your connections on LinkedIn and reconnect with just a few people you haven't spoken to in a little while. You don't want to let years go by before you reconnect with somebody, because you never know when life is going to throw you a twist. You're going to need to reconnect with somebody, and you don't want to start from ground zero, like a zero spot. But when you don't want it to die, the relationship to die on the vine. So take that time, reconnect with just a couple people. It can be just a quick email to them. And sorry, Laura, did that come through? Sorry.
Nope, that's okay. Look, we all get bings. We all get calendar.
I thought I turned it on. It was the calendar thing.
Please. And look, everybody out there, this is the challenge, right? Either the calendar bing comes through, the dog barks and goes ballistic when the mail truck goes by, the cleaning crew comes out, the vacuum cleaner right in the middle of something. This is the way of the world. So I'm
sorry.
No, it's all good. Okay, so go on. You were saying we're finishing. You know what? Actually, this is a good place to interrupt, because there was for those who maybe have not, who can really take this to heart because they are not as active on LinkedIn, perhaps, or and are looking going, geez, the last time I talked to anybody was already a year and a half ago. Will some of these people remember me or whatever? Besides email, of course, you can just send the message right through LinkedIn. What's an easy, like 1 or 2 lines that people could just use template style to reconnect with somebody where it's been a while? How do you, without having to give your life story or the proverbial kind of Christmas email newsletter, detailing everything that's happened in the last 2 years of your life? What's just a 2-line message template that they can use just to reconnect with that person?
I mean, I think it's as simple as, Hey, just wanted to check in. I was thinking about you. It's been a little while. Here's what's going on with me. Some great things going on here. Some other challenges here. What's happening with you? Be great to connect. Maybe we could talk live at some point when life isn't so, isn't too busy. Maybe we could grab a coffee, virtually or in person. Hope all's well.
Done. Look, it
Simple.
just took her like 9.5 seconds to rattle that off. So it should take you only about 14 seconds to type that if you don't type as fast as you talk like I do. So, but with that, I think it's great. So reach out, you've got your marching orders and you have your challenge. And look, she didn't ask you to do a half Ironman. So really count your blessings and just do it. Could have been a lot worse, right? I'm personally
You can join me. You can join me in my challenge.
And that's something to post on LinkedIn with everybody else. If you do manage to be that amazing and take up that gauntlet as well. All right, now go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, because you talked earlier about it, because I do think that there's a lot of parallels between business and all this crazy triathlon training that I'm doing.
How so?
In the sense that you need, to have grit and resilience in your job, right? And so I think, the pandemic taught us that more than, that was the most recent example of it. But there's all kinds of things when when you're out there day to day, you need to be able to, dust yourself off, pick yourself up. And you do that every day when you're training for these events or when you're at these events and things don't go the way you expected. And there's a certain level of grit and resilience that you learn from this kind of training.
Yes. The talk about and a good pair of shoes with a good pair of sneakers, I think will come in handy.
Yes,
for that
also
training
comes
as
in
well.
handy.
Yes. So now we've talked about some successes that you've been having along the way. What's a communications related mistake that you've made?
Yeah. So if I could ask for a do-over, for a big mistake I've made earlier in my career, I had an interview for a job I really, really wanted. I was like, I knew I was perfect. I had an inside track. I knew they also were excited about me. Got home from the interview, was in a rush, wrote the thank you note, and autocorrect respelled the name of the hiring manager, and off the thank you note went with the wrong spelling.
Oh no.
Right. So, and I knew I was the front runner for the role. Like I had a good inside skinny that like, hey, you're looking good, Dean. So didn't get the job. And, that was a really hard pill to swallow, but it taught me a really great lesson. Like one typo can change somebody's perspective on you, especially if you work in the field of communications. I mean, if you have typos in your work, you look like you don't know what you're doing. So it can eat away at somebody's confidence of you. So take your time, don't rush, don't get cocky, and take a breath, put it to the side for a little bit, come back and look at it again, because a little mistake like that can really change things.
Oh, so painful. And we've all had those moments where, you hit send and your eye just catches something as your finger is hitting the button, and you hit reply all as opposed to just reply or something along those lines. And your brain just goes, no, but I mean, just can't hit the unsend button. Nowadays, some apps do have an unsend button within the first, 5 seconds or 10 seconds or something. But often, nope, too late.
Just taking that one more moment, take that one extra beat. And look, not everyone's going to lose a job because of a typo, but in my field, in our field, I had that challenge and I learned from it. It doesn't mean I didn't make typo mistakes in my career after that. I mean, things happen. But when it comes to something important, I really try hard to take a moment, give myself a respite, go back to it, look at it again with fresh eyes, because in the heat of the moment, I'm going to make a mistake.
We all have those, the need to measure twice and cut once, right? Proofread twice and hit send once, because you can't do it the other way around. It just doesn't work. So that extra 10 seconds can
make a difference,
make a huge difference, save you an entire job worth of oops. And those are not fun, to say the least.
No fun.
So let's talk for a second about moving up in roles. So if somebody in your organization wanted to move up to a senior leadership role, aside from technical expertise, what's one skill they'd have to demonstrate to you and why?
So as I said before, I'm pretty new to my company, but my initial kind of perspective and recommendation is to be known and to be seen. You could be great technically at your job, but if you don't have a network of people who could speak for you and can vouch for you, like when you're not in the room, it might be really difficult to be taken seriously for a leadership role. So, how do you get to be seen and known? I'm not saying like get up and jump around. I'm saying look for like in your area where you can get exposure, volunteer in an organization. I was talking earlier about this employee resource group. The leadership team there has an excellent opportunity to showcase their leadership skills to the whole organization and to the leaders within the company. Also, if you get given an opportunity for a stretch project that gives you exposure to other senior leaders in the organization, grab it, do it. And so I just think it will be hard to be moved up without having just enough exposure in your network to the senior leadership so they know who you are.
So when you talk about a stretch project, what does that mean to you?
Stretch project means that you have your day-to-day job. There's a project that the organization wants to take on, and you've been asked if you would be willing to partake in that project or lead that project. It is not part of your day-to-day gig, but it gives you this chance to get exposure to the senior leaders, to try a different skill set, to do something that the company has asked for. It might push you past your capacities in some ways. You might have to stretch in terms of the kind of work you do and the amount of time you put into it, but it will pay dividends down the road.
I think that's very scary for some people who are not terribly risk tolerant. They maybe don't want to take on something. And look, the stereotype, of course, of women who are going to have 9 out of 10 requirements for a job and say, oh, I don't have that one, so I guess I shouldn't apply for it. Again, stereotype or otherwise, male or female, doesn't matter. But to the extent that there are those who are hesitant or afraid of taking on more than they can chew, or doing something where they don't confidently know how to execute everything right from the beginning, what would you say to them about this, how this does or doesn't gel?
Well, first, let me say that get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Right. And that comes straight from Peloton. So you have to excuse me. Get comfortably uncomfortable, because I'm a Peloton addict too.
As a triathlete, I would expect nothing less. Okay. So physical discomfort can also go beyond that. Go on.
Exactly. So get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because, I don't know any leader that has exposure to every component of an organization or the different pieces that are required. As they say, the best leaders bring together people who are experts, and they're not, the leader themselves is not an expert at these different things. However, as a leader, sometimes you're thrown a challenge and you just have to figure out how to figure it out. And so as I said, you get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You kind of make your way through it. You try, you take risks. But, I do think, some organizations are better suited to that than others in terms of setting people up for success in having a failure. Right. And I've been lucky to be places where they want you to take a chance, and will support you if you take a chance. And sometimes it goes great, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. That's certainly knowing the culture of the organization makes a big difference. I think there's also importance to the word failure is something that different people interpret very differently, and can be an utterly terrifying concept for some. Where a failure is a giant black mark. It will follow you for the rest of your career in that organization. Is it a big scarlet F, so to speak, or is it just mean, okay, we tried that, it didn't work, so what did we learn from it? How can we leverage it moving forward, et cetera? There's a lot of gray in that construct of failure, and one is a much bigger risk type than others. So I don't know, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to my Peloton.
Sure.
So one of my favorite instructors in Peloton, she calls failure first attempt in learning. And I don't know if she came up with it or probably she didn't, but I really believe in that, and have embraced it in my own career. Because, as I said, I've been lucky to be in organizations where, you walk a tight wire, like a high wire, and there's a safety net under you. I need to think that the leaders, having the right leadership in place to take those risks is important, right? Again,
Yes.
It speaks to the culture, but I do think that failure sounds so awful, but it is really, it can be a great learning opportunity, such a great, just a teachable moment, right?
Usually a lot longer than a moment, that's for sure. But I think the other part that I wanted to draw people's attention to that you mentioned earlier is with part of the discomfort, the getting comfortable being uncomfortable, is the resourcefulness that I heard from what you were saying with regard to the importance of being just willing to figure it out, because you can't predict everything. You probably don't have 100% of the knowledge or skills that are going to be required for whatever surprises come along the path. But the resourcefulness, the resiliency, the scrappiness of just saying, I'm going to make the phone calls I need, find the right people, find the right materials, whatever it is, and we'll figure this out. That go-getter-ness. That's a creative word. I got a PhD in linguistics.
I like it.
Do that. You like that? I can do that one. All right. So am I hearing that right?
You are. And I will add to it that, like I said, I've been lucky to have, people in my career who have shared with me, like, you think I knew everything? Like, I've been having to figure this one out too. Like, it may look like I knew what I was doing, but I'm just trying to figure this out. Like anybody else, right? Like, so, you could look up at a leader and be like, oh, they know, they know what they're doing, but not always, right? Sure. And I think it takes the right kind of leader to be like, hey, I'm not sure how to do this. I'm going to figure this one out, right? So it takes that kind of transparency in leadership to be vulnerable with your team, to share that, like, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm sure as heck going to figure it out.
Yes, the willingness to figure it out. So finally, 30 seconds or so. As Peter Drucker famously said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. What's one communication pattern that's had a big cultural impact, positive or negative, on a team that you were on or led?
So I will say that one of my favorite CEOs that I worked with, he just did such a great job of recognizing people for their hard work and contributions. And he listened when people delivered tough messages to him. So this really allowed for a culture of trust and respect, and, allowed us to be able to share things with him that, he maybe would have been scared to with other leaders. So it's this kind of creating that culture of trust and respect, and where people can say things that maybe are a little scary to say to a leader. It's the kind of culture I try to emulate, and B, seek out. I feel lucky. I found it again at this organization, but it truly creates just a winning culture.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Dina, thank you so much for joining us today. Unfortunately, we need to wrap this up, but I have a feeling you and I are going to have some other conversations after we're done, because this was a lot of fun. How can people learn more about you and Kuehne and Nagel?
To learn more about Kuehne and Nagel, you can check us out on our website, on social. We're out there. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to connect, and always happy to share experiences, learnings, just chat. Always looking to build my network, so don't hesitate to reach out.
Terrific. And to everybody else out there, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And of course, don't forget to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts so we can help even more people increase their confidence, presence, and influence. And finally, if you want to download my free guide to equipment recommendations for virtual influence, including my picks for microphones, lights, and more, go to speakingtoinfluence.com. Dina, thank you for joining us today.
Laura, thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.
I'm Dr. Laura Sokola, and you're listening to Speaking to Influence, Communication Secrets of the C-Suite. Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Laura Sokola, and I want to sincerely thank you for listening to the Speaking to Influence podcast. If you love listening to these episodes as much as I love bringing them to you, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And please go to iTunes right now to rate and review our podcast in order to help us expand our reach so even more people can master the 3 C's to command the room, connect with the audience, and close the deal.
Thanks for listening to Speaking to Influence, Communication Secrets of the C-Suite, the show for leaders who want to speak with impact. The hosts, producers, owners, and media distributors of the show make no guarantees that the strategies and information discussed will result in profit or other success and may result in losses. The opinions and statements of the hosts and guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the owners, staff, managers, broadcasters, or sponsors of the show. No medical or psychological therapy or personal or professional wellness or relationship advice is offered in the show. You are advised to seek counsel on matters related to your health, family, relationships, job, or other business and legal matters from licensed advisors in those areas prior to making any changes in business or lifestyle. No information provided may be suitable in your situation. As always, take responsibility for the decisions and actions you take, including the reactions they may make in your work, family, health, and life.